the man woman always run from. Days turned into weeks, and Amoka still didn't run. She cooked, smiled, and sang every morning. The villagers began to wonder if she was real or just a story come alive. Old Mama Ejima said, "This woman must have something special in her heart." But Amoka didn't care about gossip. She was determined to bring peace to Okoro's life. Okoro was finally happy, yet one thing still worried him. He noticed Amoka sometimes sat quietly at night, lost in thought. One evening, he asked softly, "My wife, what troubles your heart?" She smiled faintly. "Nothing, my husband." But silence sometimes hides questions. The next morning, Amoka went to the market square. She greeted everyone, bought vegetables, and met Odigu, Okoro's old friend. Odigu smiled awkwardly. "Ah, our new wife. You are still around." Amoka laughed. "Why not? Should I have packed my load like the others?" Odigu scratched his head and whispered, They all left for reasons no one truly knows. Each one said something strange happened before dawn. Amoka frowned. "Something? Like what?" Odigu hesitated. "It's not my mouth that will say it. Ask your husband, but remember, some things in that house have stories of their own." That night, Amoka couldn't sleep. Okoro was snoring softly beside her. But she kept thinking about what Odigu said. The moonlight slipped through the window, lighting up the room. Then, she heard a faint sound, knock, knock, knock. It came from behind the wall near the fireplace. Her heart started beating fast. She stood up quietly, looked around, and saw something she had never noticed. A small wooden frame hidden behind a mat. She lifted it slowly, and found a tiny carved door. It was covered with dust. When she pushed it slightly, it creaked open. Inside were old wrappers, broken beads, and dry leaves with names written on them, 10 names. Her eyes widened. She whispered, "So, this is what everyone talked about." The next morning, Okoro noticed her silence. "My wife, you look worried. Did something happen?" Amoka looked at him and said gently, "I found something in the wall. Things that belonged to women before me. Why do you keep them?" Okoro's face changed. He sat down slowly. "Those were left behind by the women who left me. I didn't keep them to scare anyone. I just couldn't throw them away. Every name reminds me of a promise that ended too soon." Amoka's eyes softened. "Then maybe it's time to stop keeping pain as memory." Okoro looked at her, surprised. She continued, "Tomorrow, we will open that small room together, and let peace enter where fear once lived." Okoro nodded slowly. The wind blew softly through the window. The lamp flickered beside them. Sometimes, what looks like bad luck is only an untold story waiting for light. But in Okoro's house, silence sat heavy like a stone. That day, Amoka reminded him gently, "My husband, you promised we would open that small room today." Okoro nodded slowly, fear showing in his eyes. "I remember, but what if opening it brings back things better left unseen?" Amoka smiled softly. "Peace doesn't come from hiding. Sometimes you must open the door to let the wind carry out the dust." They stood before the small wooden door. It had been closed for many years. Okoro's hands trembled as he lifted the latch. The door creaked open, and a wave of cold air brushed their faces. Inside were 10 old calabashes, wrappers, and names written on dry leaves, the names of the women who once called him husband. Amoka bent down slowly, touching one of the wrappers. "They all left in silence," she whispered. "But silence doesn't mean peace." Then she turned to him with calm eyes and said, "My husband, I already know what made them run." Okoro froze. You know?" She smiled gently. "Yes. What frightened others is what I can handle with joy. Okoro looked confused. You mean, you're not afraid of me? Amoka laughed lightly. Afraid? No. The same thing that made others shout for help made me thank the heavens. He stared at her, unsure what to say. Amoka placed her hand on his shoulder and said warmly, Some women fear too much of a good thing. But me, I have prayed for a man with strength, one who could truly hold me with care. Okoro blinked, still shocked. So, you don't plan to leave? She shook her head. No, my husband. I plan to build a home. She began gathering the old wrappers one by one. Let's take these things outside. Let the wind have them. Together, they carried the items to the open yard. The sun was high, the air felt lighter. Amoka lifted her hands and said, Whatever made them afraid, let it find peace. Whatever made you lonely, let it turn to laughter. Okoro stood beside her, eyes moist, heart heavy with relief. For the first time, he felt free. That evening, people passing by heard laughter coming from Okoro's compound, something they hadn't heard in years. Odigu, his friend, stopped at the gate and smiled. So it's true, this woman has done what no one could do. Okoro laughed and said, Yes, my brother. What scared others became her blessing. Odigu shook his head, smiling. Indeed, not every storm is meant to destroy. Some storms come to teach strength. That night, under the moonlight, Amoka sat with Okoro and said, You see, my husband, people run from what they don't understand. But when you meet someone who understands you, your trouble becomes your treasure. Okoro smiled, looking up at the sky. I prayed for peace. I never knew peace would come dressed as you. Amoka chuckled softly. And I prayed for a man strong enough to carry both my heart and my laughter. They sat quietly, watching the fire fade to ember. In life, some people will fear what was meant to bless them. But when the right person comes, what others call a burden becomes a story of joy.